Back now with more of my conversation with former Congressman Tim Ryan. I want to talk to you about Joe Biden because there's been a lot of discussion here recently, especially with the release of a book about his final days and months in the White House, and the fact that he was not doing as well as many thought, that his administration was keeping him away from the press because of that. You were very critical of Joe Biden right off the bat, and saying that it was time to turn the page. You took a lot of heat for that. Do you feel vindicated in any way?
Yeah, I mean, to a certain extent, that I stuck my neck out and was right, but at what cost? I mean, that's the frustrating part.
Did it cost you a lot with the party?
Well, maybe, who knows? But it cost the country a lot. The fact that they literally were covering up his health, that he was in a position where he couldn't articulate and get on the stump and campaign for the positive benefits of $35 insulin and the CHIPS Act, which obviously has a huge impact here in Ohio, and the Inflation Reduction Act, which we have battery factories popping up in places like Lordstown, Ohio. He couldn't articulate that. He couldn't sell that. And whether you like it or not, politics is about selling your vision for the country, and he couldn't do that. So he put the Democratic Party in a terrible position, put Kamala Harris in a terrible position, put Sherrod Brown in a terrible, Bob Casey, John Tester, because people didn't know what we were doing. And yes, people were hurting, but he also reindustrialized the country. For the first time in like 30 or 40 years, we're moving stuff back here. And he couldn't articulate that. And that's just so, I felt like it was really, really selfish. And politics, it's got to be about serving. It's got to not about you and your ego and your legacy. It's got to be about getting stuff done for people. And he chose his personal ambition over, I think, the good of the party and the country.
You mentioned a lot of the things that got accomplished during the Biden administration that had a direct impact on working class people, working class voters, and yet, as we have discussed, those voters have deserted the Democratic Party. I'm curious, given the fact that we have seen economic gains that are occurring because of Democratic policies, how much of this is the economy and how much of it is cultural issues?
I think it's a little bit of both. I think the fact that, again, I just mentioned Biden not talking about reindustrialization and bringing jobs back. People don't see the Democratic Party as the party of economic growth and lifting people up and giving them some upward mobility to get into the middle class. Period, end of story. They see us as having and engaging in these cultural issues. And many times Democrats don't start those conversations. I think the Republicans start them. But the Democrats take the bait on them, and we live in that space. And if you do that, people may even agree with you on abortion or on whatever issue. But it's like 6th, 7th, or 8th on their list. Their first issue is a job, wages, payments, pensions, prescription drugs, and we don't talk about that stuff, so we default to that, and we lose the economic argument.
Okay, but at the same time, what you're seeing is the Republican Party defining the Democratic Party by focusing on grievance issues, leaving the Democratic Party with a choice. You either ignore that approach, or you join in on that approach and you risk alienating and offending a lot of your electorate. You're working with a double-edged sword here.
Well, you have to recognize why people feel aggrieved. And it goes back to what we just talked about with trade and globalization and automation. Like, if people don't feel like you actually know what the hell they're going through, then they're never going to vote for you. And so you have to meet them where they are. And yes, they have been screwed. Yes, we've given tax cuts. Yes, the country's generated wealth. Yes, the top 1% and 5% have done really well. But what about us? And neither party was speaking to them, and that's where Trump came in.
There were a couple of moments there that were made this sort of policy possible within Democratic-controlled Congress, where you were trying to deal with some of the tax issues, where you were trying to extend the child tax credit that had been so effective in lifting children out of poverty during the pandemic, and that you had Democrats, Joe Manchin primarily, going against all of that. I mean, on the one hand, it's like you're saying, we've got all of these things, and then your own party's not buying into it.
Well, you get back to the argument of Joe Biden was not capable of making the argument. How many of your listeners know about the child tax credit? You know, how many of your listeners really and viewers know about the actual reindustrialization policies that are happening?
But even when it was out there, and there was a lot of reporting out there, especially in West Virginia because of the Manchin, and people were saying, no, I'm using this money to fix the car, to get to work, to provide child care. None of that seemed to matter to Joe Manchin. I mean, at some point, is the Democratic Party going to have to say, we are the party of working people. We're going to advocate for working issues. That might mean, direct assistance for people, going back to this idea of the government providing a safety net. You don't really hear that coming from the Democratic Party.
Well, I think, everybody's in agreement that there needs to be some safety net. But Democrats need to get away from, it's got to be redistribution from the wealthy to the poor,
but there's
to the middle class.
redistribution happening now. If you listen to some,
to some extent,
it's going from the from the poor to the wealthy.
Yeah, well, that's the two tax cuts that Bush passed, then two Trump tax cuts. They're going to primarily the top 1%, all borrowed money, debt and deficit, that poor and working class people are going to have to end up footing the bill for that stuff. So yeah, it is in reverse. But Democrats have to start talking about growing the pie and then giving people upward mobility to work themselves with skills, being healthy, make sure they have health care and all that, to move into the middle class. And right now, people don't feel like they can work hard, play by the rules, and actually get ahead in life. They're working harder, they're playing by the rules, and they're still falling behind. And I don't really think that any of Trump's policies are lifting people up. Certainly a tax cut for the top 1% is not going to do it. So there's an opening for a Bill Clinton-style Democrat to say, we're going to work with business. We don't hate business. Like, I hate when Democrats talk about, we got to hate all business. Why? These are the job creators. These are the people that mortgage their house to keep their business going.
I think when it's the criticism of business is corporations. Reducing corporate tax rate to 21%, and now attempts to reduce it even more than that.
Those are not mutually exclusive. Right? I can want to work with a business and just say, hey, we got huge debt, huge deficits. We're going to try to reform government because we are wasting a lot of money. And that's where top line Doge is probably a good idea, not with a chainsaw, right. So we need to make government run more efficiently. We do need to ask the wealthier to pay more in taxes. It doesn't mean I hate you. It means we've got to rebuild Portsmouth and Marietta and Steubenville. We've got to reinvest with broadband. We've got to clean the lakes and the rivers. We've got to rebuild our downtowns and rebuild our theaters and we were talking earlier about people leaving Florida, people leaving the West Coast. Things are so expensive. If we can get our cities up and running, small and mid-sized cities in Ohio, we can welcome a lot of investment here. But you got to have broadband, you got to have quality of life, you got to have a clean river. And so we should be about the business of doing that. So I'm just saying, you don't have to hate business. You can ask them to pay more in taxes if you're a billionaire. Nothing wrong with that. And promise them that you're going to spend it well and efficiently into investments. But you don't have to hate them.
All right, one more final attempt here. Will you run for governor, or at least give me an idea? What window are we looking at for a decision?
Probably looking at the end of summer, I would think. Maybe early fall again. Got a little bit of the luxury of having some name ID, and it's going to be a family decision, and got to work through that. I spent 20 years in Congress, and missed a lot of family events and a lot of games, and I'm enjoying that part of my life now is coaching my 10-year-old in football and basketball and just being there for practices and stuff and being around the house. My wife keeps me fairly busy with stuff. So I'm actually enjoying it. So we'll see, but it'll be a few months out.
Congressman Tim Ryan, thanks for your time.
Thank you.
When we come back, a look at birthright citizenship. Stay with us.
Thank you for watching our YouTube channel. Let Spectrum News be your resource for balanced, in-depth political coverage, and click the subscribe button right here. You can also download our app or watch us on TV to learn more about the candidates, where they stand on the issues, and more. We'll see you then.